Dear human, dear soul, I welcome you to my podcast series Conversations with the Universe. Since a near-death experience, I have the gift to communicate with the subtle energies of the cosmos. This happens in a form of deep meditation in which I ask certain entities of the world beyond to communicate with me. As one of the first contacts with the other world, my old friend and teacher, friend of the Indians, showed himself to me, and it is now a great pleasure for me to introduce you to these conversations as a supplement to the books. Please excuse me if the terms and our articulations are not perfect. Our mother tongue is German, but we try to translate it to the best of our ability. Thank you for understanding. Dear friend of the Indians, please talk to me about the subject of birth. I'm already looking forward to it.
It is my great pleasure to be able to communicate these messages and pieces of wisdom through this book. This subject concerns all souls that have ever incarnated and that will ever incarnate, as well as those who through their body and their willingness provide the opportunity to bring a life into this world. But this subject is not just for those of you who give birth to a child, but for all of you.
Then please begin to telling us what you have to say.
Human bodies begin to be formed as you made and the sperm impregnates the egg. But the soul does not enter the body until later, at the moment when the development of the body has progressed to the point where it can truly support a life.
Do you mean to say that the point where the soul enters the body is different in each case?
No, it tends to happen universally after the 4th month of pregnancy.
That reminds me that in the human world, the first 3 months are considered the critical phase of pregnancy.
Yes, you could say that. But whoever set this rule had no idea whether and when a soul enters the body. The important thing is that you understand that the soul of a child will only enter a body when the development of that body has progressed to the point where it is ready to support it. That means that in the first month of pregnancy, the life of the body only functions on a biological level, but does not hold conscious energy. When the soul finally enters the body, it does not happen all at once, if you want to measure this in terms of time, but it will take several months. This time is necessary for the soul energy that has been without a body before to become slowly accustomed to the construction and the form of the human body. Therefore, a child's soul does not stay with the mother after the 5th month, but it comes and goes. But as time passes, it will inhabit the new body more and more.
Where is the soul when it is not with the mother?
That is a beautiful question. I can understand your way of thinking, but please understand that energy is all around you. Therefore, saying the energy is not always with the mother hinders the facts a little. Please forgive me, but I meant to say that the energy still wanders freely, that it does not yet permanently reside in this small body, instead settling into it in small increments.
Should you do certain things to assist this period of settling in, or is that not necessary?
All is directed by the cosmos. Therefore, you do not need to follow any information or advice. The only important and indispensable thing that the cosmos is asking you to do is to love this developing life.
What if the body of the child dies in the first 4 months? After all, it did not have a soul at this time, right?
That is correct. The soul only enters after this critical phase. There are many reasons for this, but it is mostly due to a structural, not a mental deficiency, although occasionally it is a mental one. What I mean to say is that there may be physical reasons why the conditions to develop life are not perfect, but that it can also have mental reasons, such as when your spirit is not in harmony with the body. Then the body rejects the life.
But if some women keep losing the developing life again and again at this stage, do you know why this is so?
No,
Could you say that wanting it too much maybe also has its pitfalls?
it always has. But when it comes to birthing, everything is being directed by the cosmos, because the energies involved, so limitless and unconscious, by comparison, are interacting with your conscious will, so that what you want or do not want has relatively little influence. But it is definitely also a question of the energy of the human being who is involved. Those whose energy is free and flexible have a stronger effect than those who enter into this process unconsciously. But do not let us dwell on this subject for too long. I wish to point out other circumstances. Those people who have left the critical phase behind so that the little body is ready to receive the energy that has taken consciousness as a soul need to know something that I wish to tell them today. The incarnating soul has chosen the circumstances and the parents freely. It did in no way enter into this family structure unconsciously or willy-nilly. What I mean to say by this is that not one of you can rightly plead that you did not have any influence over the situation of your life, nor can use this as an excuse not to change anything.
So you want to point out that the place, the time of birth, and the parental structures have been deliberately chosen before birth because of their specific spiritual circumstances. But could you give me a better image? I mean, what do you mean by chosen? Accordingly to which parameters do these energies choose where they want to go?
That is a beautiful question. I thank you for that. The energies do not directly perceive your world, but they perceive the spiritual state of the parents and their prevailing circumstances. I mean that they perceive the energy of the place, the emotions of the parents, like an abundance that surrounds them, and they can perceive the energy of the parents as well as how the energy of one parent interacts with the energy of the other. That means that the parental couple is scrutinized as if through a magnifying lens, and if they interact lovingly, they will attract a soul that wishes to perceive and to experience love. Parents who treat each other in an unloving manner attract souls that wish to experience this situation, perhaps in order to move away from it eventually. But it would be impossible to describe all the ramifications of this possibility here. But I want to point out again that your children have chosen the form of both of their parents absolutely freely.
So you want to point out that there is no such thing as powerlessness on the soul level, but only free will.
Yes, that is correct.
This begs the question as to why certain souls get to be born into extremely complicated circumstances. Did incarnated souls really freely choose to be born into war-torn regions, into places of oppression, or where there is, for instance, child labor?
I cannot answer that, but I suspect that it is the expansion of the soul that matters and not the experience of suffering as such. The souls have chosen such structures in order to eventually escape them. This would be my guess, even though I do not like so guess. I do not really like to do that at all.
Perhaps I can ask another entity about that?
Yes, you should do that. Perhaps the Cosmic Father, because this is such a far-reaching subject that I would like to know more about it myself.
Okay, but could you still generally say that all souls that choose dire circumstances do so in order to expand, to find their true strength through this experience of constriction?
Yes.
Then let us get back to the subject of birth. You wanted to describe what exactly you meant by being close to the mother when there is no such thing as a space. In that case, proximity would mean something else. Please, can you describe this a little more precisely?
The soul is ready to incarnate, but waits until the body is fully formed and ready, and it moves in and out of this body again and again. But it also leaves it again and again.
How can I imagine that? Is that a steady back and forth into and out of the tiny human form?
It is roughly as you just described it. There are limitless energies at work when a soul enters a body, and once inside the body, it animates it.
So you could say that the baby is only kicking when the soul has entered the little body again.
You could say that. Otherwise, it is just a physical organism that exists without receiving directive impulses. Mothers who feel such impulses should pay attention to this moment and these movements, because these are the moments where the child's soul has entered the body.
And are there energies that stay in the body of the child the entire time?
That happens very rarely, because the soul needs the limitlessness of the cosmos and does not relish to the constriction of the body. The constriction of the body is a necessary collateral effect that it has to put up with in order to incarnate, but ultimately a soul is happier without a body.
Okay. And how does the birth happen after all this time? Please tell me about the next phase.
Then the development of the body is finished, and the soul is ready to experience being human. The lungs are ready to breathe, and the organism no longer wishes to be nourished via the umbilical cord. The eyes want to open. Everything wants to begin to live in the finished form. The soul knows that all is now ready for incarnation, and shortly before the birth, it enters the body of the child. That can be a few days prior to the actual birth, or very shortly before birth. That is up to the soul who incarnates.
And what happens then?
Birth is an unpleasant experience for a soul, because it knows that then it cannot leave the body as easily as this was the case before the birth. And it knows that the birthing process can be dangerous and cause permanent damage to the body, which in turn may impede its growth. The risk involved in the birthing process is very unpleasant for the soul. I would therefore advise your mothers to surround the fears of this soul with love. I mean by that you should speak to it, love it, and support it, and do everything in your power to keep this process as short as possible. Then it will calm down and gain trust in your energy.
What happens during a caesarean section, which is a different birth process?
This is a very important question, dear one. Because if you think that this is an easy way out, you would be wrong. When a soul enters the body, it is a process of connection. When you experience birth through the normal process, the soul has the possibility to start this process beforehand and to become accustomed to the idea of living in a constricted form. But if you choose a caesarean section, you deprive the soul of the opportunity to choose this state of being at the opportune time. The decision of the doctors to initiate the birthing process according to their own schedule carries its own risks, because it could be that you remove a body and its life force from another body, but that the soul is not in the body at that time. This can be a real torture for the new soul, because you have taken its new body from the mother's body and it still has to get inside it. This causes stress and complications that you cannot grasp with your consciousness. It is the soul who must decide when it enters the body. This type of birth interferes with this process of decision-making. It is difficult to describe, but you are interfering with a cosmic process. Therefore, I would like to ask that if you wish to give birth that way, then please let the soul know about it in good time. Talk to your child when you feel its presence, and are therefore sure that in this moment it is alive inside you. Tell them about the day you have chosen for its birth, and imagine it again and again, so that the soul can get accustomed to the idea.
So you are not saying that it is generally bad, but that you should use the connection to your child in order to prepare the child in good time for what is coming.
That is correct.
So let's assume that the soul has been informed and that all is well. Isn't this type of birth better after all, because it causes less stress to the soul, because it does not get exposed to the risks involved with passing through the birth canal?
That may be. But from a spiritual point of view, the normal way of giving birth is still preferable. I do not want to judge here, because it's really up to the individual souls. Some need this narrow passage as a transition into constriction. Some find the liberation of the caesarean section a very confusing transition into constriction. It is a multifaceted as all cosmic perception.
What happens when a life, regardless of the way it was born, does not breathe after birth and therefore dies? Did this then also happen accordingly to the free will of the soul? What exactly happens then?
That is a very important question. I thank you for that. The soul that cannot incarnate stays connected to this lifeless body for a while, but quickly begins to wander back into the cosmic levels. I would say that the soul remains in or near this body no more than 4 hours in your human reckoning. But if you want to know more about this, you should read the chapter on transition, because that is a dead body and the soul is still with it. I do not wish to say much more about this now.
How can this happen? Why does this happen, that after all the time of going in and out and in and out of the body during pregnancy, the soul ultimately chooses not to incarnate?
There are different reasons for that. The soul is a multifaceted entity. Some life becomes ensouled, but the energy of the soul is not strong enough to fully animate this life. And that means that the innate energy of this being is not enough to transition into this life alive. I mean to say that the incarnating soul did not have enough energy and hence not enough strength to animate this body. Do you understand?
I do, yes, I do. You touch on the different energy potentials of the souls. So the energy does not have to incarnate on earth, but it continues to look around for the right form in order to grow, right?
Yes, that is correct. The forms are as varied as the flowers on a meadow, if I may use this example. But it does not have to be Earth. The Earth is generally a very popular and warm planet, and so many energies are drawn to its aura. But if there is no organic possibility to provide the possibility of growth and expansion to the aspiring soul, then this soul will find it elsewhere.
I understand. What happens in the case of crypt death?
Then souls have decided that they no longer wish to inhabit this body. I do not wish to confuse you at this point, because while incarnation into a body is a very intense and far-reaching experience, so is trying out existence in a young body.
You mean then the soul can still decide to leave again? Why is that not always possible? I mean, when you get older, but only during these first few months.
This is a question of the power of the physicality. When the soul is freshly incarnated, it is the soul energy that directs the body. As long as this energy is the more powerful energy, it can decide when to leave the body. But as the body grows, this energy gets weaker. The physical energy grows and becomes stronger, and then the soul no longer has the freedom to choose.
When do we reach this pivotal point between the power of the soul and the body?
At about the age of 1.
Wow. And why does it happen that a soul decides to leave?
I don't know. It is one choice. It is own choice. And if it wishes it, then its wish must be honored. It is not dangerous a step back into the cosmos, just a step back into another form. And it is in no way negative.
Could it be that these souls were hoping to experience a special kind of existence, but then realized that the circumstances, which of course arose as a consequence of the free will of the people around this child, for instance the parents, did not after all develop into something that the child was hoping for? I mean, that they did, in other words, change?
That may be. But I would like to stay away from judging this.
Okay, back to the manner of birth. What exactly happens when there is a premature birth?
This is rather complicated, because similar to the experience of a birth that did not happen naturally, this involves an interference with the free will of the soul, and this interference creates stress for this soul. This means that the soul has to inhabit the body earlier in order to give it a soul. That means to give a soul to a body that is not ready.
Mm-hmm.
That is, of course, suboptimal and, as I said earlier, creates stress for this soul. So this soul incarnates with a birth issue.
You mean, of course, that this experience remains as part of the soul's memory and requires time in order to be balanced.
That is correct. These people usually feel that they did not have a chance to fully develop their vitality. Therefore, they need to live more intensely, and to try and experience more.
And there are dangers involved with that? No, are there dangers involved with that? For there are souls who then turn around and decide not to incarnate, and then the little body in the incubator does not survive.
Yes, that is correct.
People say that the character of the children creates the appropriate task for the parents. What do you say about that?
That is not correct. Because a lot of responsibility lies with the parents, but also with the incarnating souls. It is not right to lay the full responsibility at the parents' door, for that would mean that the responsibility, the free will of the souls, does not count. Of course, you have taken on a special kind of responsibility with the decision to become parents, and with that a readiness to have certain experiences. But this soul does not just come in order to provide an experience for you. This soul wants to live, or it does not want to live, as the case may be. It is not right to place the kind of judgment on these matters as you are wont to. What ultimately counts more than the decision of the parents is the decision of the incarnating soul.
I understand. But what do parents have to bear in mind when they have given birth, so a baby to a baby, and the baby now begins to live?
A soul that has incarnated in a body now reads... Sorry, I start again. Give me 1 second, please. A soul that has incarnated in a body now needs rest and love in order to feel itself to gradually accept a body that no longer floats in the amniotic fluid. The people should let their babies rest and try not to distract them too much with their words and their touch. The people should leave them alone for a while in order to let them feel what this new perception means to the soul.
And what can you do if babies cry a lot?
This is a completely normal way for this being to express itself. Therefore, I would like to recommend to these parents that they give their child love and attention. Communication to a baby also means crying, but it does not have to be that way. Give the child attention.
There are people who say that the power of the soul still fully expresses itself during the first years of childhood. You yourself have mentioned this with regard to the soul energy that it will gradually be supplanted by the physical energy. That would mean that you can perceive the soul energy of a child more clearly when it is younger than when it's older.
That is correct. Therefore, I would ask you to observe your children. Let them rest, let them be by themselves for a while, and observe what they do, what they look for, how they talk when they wish to talk, and what they wish to achieve when they wish to do something. The way they move, the way they look at something, the way they exist will tell you what kind of soul energy dwells in them. This will become less and less apparent as the years go by and the souls become more and more deeply embedded into your structures. Therefore, make good use of this first month and years in order to learn about the energy of this particular being.
Could you say that from the time we go to school, we are so deeply in the clutches of our human structures that all our soul energy has been suppressed?
Indeed you can.
Oh, really? Then it is high time that there are schools that teach spiritual knowledge, I think.
That would be a good idea. Maybe you can give some impulses in that direction. We will see.
Yes, we will see. I would like to return to the subject of birth. How does a soul know when the mother is ready to give birth to a body that can provide the right form for this soul?
That is very simple. The life inside such a body and in this form begins to radiate. The cosmos sees this and wishes to send a soul into this body. This is like an empty vessel that the cosmos cannot allow to be empty, since this is not possible in the cosmos. And therefore the energy is drawn to this form as soon as it's ready to be filled.
So all souls perceive other bodies that are ready, and as soon as the form is ready, as it is strong enough, it happens. I mean, it needs both the readiness of the souls and the readiness of the mother, right?
Right. It happens all by itself. Nobody has to do anything. It just happens.
But the fertilization of the egg is a purely physical thing, not a spiritual thing, right?
Right. It is purely physical. You do not need any spirituality. You do not have to provide anything except for the body making this process possible to be healthy.
But there are people who wish for children and still do not get pregnant. Are they doing something wrong?
No. The right physical circumstances are simply not in place. The cosmos is always ready. All you need to create is a healthy form.
Understand, but what happens when a woman who has given birth to a child does not want this child? What does this mean on the cosmic level?
These impulses are being perceived by the cosmos, but this does not mean that the healthy form is not filled with life. This body will receive a soul in any event as soon as the physical conditions are provided. The mother, however, then has a personal responsibility to give love to this soul, as I already mentioned. The way she does this is her own responsibility.
Can this soul be damaged if it perceives that it's not welcome with the father or with mother's love?
Sadly enough, that is correct. Because love is a cosmic energy. And if an incarnated energy falls into such an unsupported form, then this soul will need a lot of balance in its life. Maybe it will look for love in other forms and in different ways to a much greater degree than other souls.
Are the parents capable for this? Although I do not like to use this expression, but it is the right word in the context of my question.
No. No, dear. The responsibility is theirs. The way in which they live this process is their decision. And if they want to pass this experience on without love, then this is what it is and only serves to weaken their own connection to the cosmos. Contamination does happen at this point. But this in turn is their life task, and we do not speak of culpability. You know that.
Yes, please forgive me. I will try to avoid it. I have another question concerning the readiness of the souls to incarnate. At what point are the souls ready to incarnate? Only after the first 4 months of pregnancy have passed, or from the moment of fertilization of the egg? When does the cosmos know that a life is developing that needs a soul?
The souls feel the potential for a new soul to come into being through the frequency emitted by the womb. This information is noticeable by all beings of the cosmos if they so wish. Therefore, a certain readiness exists already from the moment of fertilization.
And what happens when a woman has an abortion within these 4 months? I mean, when she consciously destroys this form and this developing life, will this turn this person into an enemy of life?
I thank you very much for this important question. I'm glad for it, even though this subject is not always pleasant. For if a person destroys the life that is about to develop inside her, she creates an experience that needs to be balanced out eventually. The life that develops is a cosmic event, and the people who willfully destroy such a form interfere with cosmic energies in a way that the repercussions are hard for me to describe. The consequences are manifold and differentiated, because one person may do a lot of good and is so full of love that in this case they may not make this decision as an enemy of life, but with a loving energy that has been forced into this decision and that may not suffer further dark repercussions resulting from this deed. But others who carry less love inside them may act from a negative impulse, and this is just another brick in the wall of the unconscious net that governs their life. Therefore, it is not easy to say. The important thing is that you do everything you do always, always and always with love and in connectedness. You can even decide to terminate a growing life inside you. But you must do this consciously and with love. This is permitted as long as it happens in full consciousness of your deep connection to the cosmos and before the first time that the soul enters the body.
That sounds very complex.
It is. Therefore, it is difficult to talk about it in simple words. Please forgive me. I still hope I was able to do so in some way.
Yes, don't worry. I understand the interplay of self-responsibility, permission and love, especially in difficult situations like these. Please, let's take another excursion into the subject of the feeble souls. What happens to them when they are looking for another life from on Earth, which is the smallest terrestrial life form that can accept them? Do ants, for instance, have a soul?
This is another wonderful question. I thank you for this. The feeble souls do have the possibility to incarnate into animal bodies, but they only have that choice within a certain framework. The ant that you mentioned is a functioning organism, but it does not yet have a soul, but it has consciousness. This is a small but important difference. Energy has consciousness, but souls are far more than just energy with consciousness. They carry memories as well.
So from what point onwards is a form able to carry a soul?
That is different from planet to planet. But on your planet Earth, it is the form of a mouse. The smallest beings that can carry a soul are animals from the size of a mouse onwards.
So you could say that all mice are souled beings, and that these souls are somewhat feebler souls than carry memories?
No, that is not quite correct. The energy of a mouse would be sufficient to receive a soul, but it does not have to. It is a sort of intermediary being. There is a possibility, but it does not have to happen. You should rather ask how you recognize that a mouse has a soul.
And how can you tell?
When a mouse begins to live according to certain structures and begins to develop a sort of intelligence appropriate for a human body, it has a soul.
So you could generally say that some of the laboratory mice have souls?
Unfortunately, this is true.
Oh.
And this, of all places, is the sort of environment that such souls would need in order to incarnate.
Oops.
So if you experiment on such beings, you may very well be experimenting on beings that have a soul.
Will the science who conduct experiments with mice then become enemies of life, even if they do not know that some of them may have souls?
Yes, they will.
Oh, wonderful. So even when they do this with the goal of to alleviate human suffering, they still become enemies of life in cosmic sense?
It does not work that way. Human research must not put research above life. Life itself is far more important than the sort of information you can gather from terminating it.
What happens to the people who do such things in the name of science?
These people become enemies of life, and they have to create balance in this or in another life. This balance is required of them. All beings on this planet that are subjected to your power require this balance from you, every single one of them. Every single one of them.
Okay. But back to the size of the soul. If a soul can enter a body from the size of a mouse upwards, this means that rats can have souls too, right?
Why shouldn't they? It's correct. The crucial factor is whether an organism has the necessary strength to hold the energy. It is like a form that needs particular circumstances in order to support, to bind, or to direct the energy.
So an ant only contains conscious energy, but a rat or a mouse can contain energy with memories, like, for instance, a soul. It can, but it does not have to, right?
Yes, exactly.
The decisive factor is the soul energy itself, whether it wants to enter such a form or not. And what about larger animals? Is there a choice, or do they need soul energy with memories to animate them?
All animals, from the size of the mouse upwards, provide the opportunity for a soul to enter them. All animals, except for the group of whales, provide this platform of choice, but they can also exist without a soul.
While human organism cannot exist without a soul, right?
Right.
Is the human organism special on planet Earth?
You could say that, because it needs a soul to exist. There are no human beings without a soul.
Really?
Really.
Even though there are some human beings who are so cruel that you might think that they don't have such a soul.
I understand deeply what you mean, but this is really so. Even those beings that are so exceptionally cruel possesses a soul.
And why are whales similar to human beings in that they can only exist with a soul?
Good question. Whales, dear Sylvia, are the connecting link between human beings and animals. They provide soul energy to the world of water, and they live in this form, but indeed they have souls.
So all members of the whale family, including dolphins, have a soul.
That is correct.
But there are such cruel whale catchers, and whales of all animals are so loving.
You mean to say that they emanate a loving energy? That is their soul energy.
But why would a soul choose to live in a whale?
That is their decision, dear. I do not know. It provides this kind of form, and the soul wishes to experience this form. This is all.
But that means that when humans kill a whale, they kill a souled being.
That is correct. They always do this. But I have already said much about this. All animals are powerless against you. The termination of such a life always means that you will become enemies of life, and that you will have to balance out these deeds.
So that means that if you look into the eyes of a whale, you are looking into a soul energy with memories.
Yes.
So that means that all animals from the size of a mouse can accept a soul, but they don't have to.
Right.
That means if I have the feeling that my cat does not act like a normal cat, then this would be an indication that a soul with memories lives inside it, and not just energy with consciousness, right?
That is correct.
But how can a soul in an animal body live in purity, since it only follows the animal instincts?
It is possible because it does not possess an ego.
So that means the animal only follows its animal impulses. It does not calculate, but only follows its instincts, and therefore it is firmly anchored in cosmic balance.
That is correct, yes.
I understand. Does the soul purify while it lives in just an animal body, because it always acts within these cosmic harmony?
Yes, exactly. Therefore, some souls choose these forms in order to avoid the risk of further contamination. This is one of the main reasons for incarnating in an animal body.
But can they increase their energy in that way?
No. They can only purify.
But can you really purify without a conscious attempt to balance?
Purification is not strictly tied to seeking balance. It is linked to the experience of being alive, of existing without ego.
That sounds very complex and complicated again.
That's the cosmos, dear.
According to some teachings here on earth, once a soul has begun to incarnate in a human body, it can never go back to an animal body, they say. But that can't be right after what you have just told me.
Exactly, because that is wrong. That message is wrong. Free will and free choice for every being in the cosmos exists eternally. A soul only needs a form in order to inhabit a life. But you can also find life without a soul, such as is the case with the very small animals.
So the souls choose freely what they wish to experience, and then they choose the appropriate form.
Yes.
But when a soul is already very wide and strong, can it still inhabit in very small organism? Isn't it linked to the weakness of the soul energy?
The form is determined by the form of a soul, by the power of a soul. Sorry, I will repeat this. It's too important. The form is determined by the power of a soul. You understand?
Yes.
Strong souls with their great power can no longer live in smaller organisms. That would overtax the small body. So you mostly find the weaker souls in the small beings, if they even possess a soul.
Now we have digressed a little, but it was very interesting. So let us get back to the subject of birth. Thank you for that. Who decides on the incarnation?
The soul.
But are there souls who wish to incarnate and cannot?
That cannot be. Because a soul that is ready begins to move, and this will start the process. It is impossible for a soul that has decided to accelerate not to do so, because cosmic law follows the soul's impulses.
What happens when children are left alone after birth, such as practiced by Scientology?
The unfilled experience of love can cause a soul to decide to leave again. The sense of touch is an essential part of perception that the soul wishes to experience. The children who have to live through this period entirely without being touched, especially when they are left in darkened rooms, may not wish for this experience anymore and decide to leave. This will then lead to crib death, which also happens under different circumstances.
Why do these religious communities do things like that?
I do not know, my dear. People's unconsciousness has no limits.
Or what happens when a mother, for instance, dies in an accident and the child can be saved but has to live in an incubator for a while? Does that mean that the soul was forced to inhabit the body without the opportunity to get used to it more slowly beforehand, as you described earlier?
Exactly. The soul cannot change anymore. It is now forced to inhabit the premature body.
But then it really has to get into it very fast, especially if the mother dies suddenly.
That is correct. And this will create stress for the soul when it has to inhabit the body suddenly, even though it was meant to gradually get used to it. This means sudden constriction and a loss of security because the home provided by the mother is no more. This soul, on the one hand, loses the perception of its cosmic home, and at the same time also the perception of motherly protection. This is a very distinctive experience. But they are souls who wish to experience this.
Well, okay, I understand. Thank you very much for this very, very interesting chapter. Do you wish to say anything more about the subject?
No,
Then what will be our next subject?
Transition.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm very much looking forward to it.
Me too. Thank you. Love.